It was just another quiet evening, until one moment rewrote everything I thought I knew about family, love, and boundaries. I never imagined that I would tell this tale. My life took an unexpected turn. My name is Rachel, and I am 43 years old. I've been parenting my son Tyler alone for a long time. He is currently 21 years old, and we have always been close, supporting one another through the highs and lows of life. When something unexpected happened one night, Tyler looked really tired and said he didn't feel well. He'd been working hard and studying a lot, and he looked worn out. I told him he could lie down on my bed for a while if he wanted to rest. It was a cold night, and our house takes a while to warm up. So I covered him with a heavy blanket. At first, it seemed like a mother helping her son. But as I lay next to him, I felt him move closer. I assumed he was trying to get warm, and I didn't give it much thought. But then he shifted closer under the blanket, seeking comfort the way he used to as a child. I could feel his warmth next to me. His steady breathing eased down as we lay there, as if he were falling asleep. The room was so quiet that I could hear my own heartbeat, which was strange but comforting. I didn't move to avoid disturbing him, telling myself it was just a mother comforting her son. However, after a while he moved again, moving closer and closer to me under the blanket. I felt his arm wrap around me a little tighter, and I froze for a moment, not knowing what to think. Part of me wanted to say something to get out, but another part of me remained motionless. There was a tension in the air that I couldn't ignore, and I wasn't sure why I felt this way. Suddenly, I was startled by a shift in the blanket, unsure of what it was, and tried to stay calm. My heart began to race. I made an effort to remain composed and convince myself that he was only my kid. Perhaps he wasn't even aware of it. I tried to endure the emotions that were beginning to well up inside of me as I lay there. I convinced myself it was only a brief, weird, uncomfortable time that would end. But as the minutes passed, I became aware that things had changed, and I was unsure of how to respond. Tyler remained beside me, breathing steadily, but I could sense our growing intimacy. I tried to relieve the tension by saying something humorous, but I couldn't find the right words. I wasn't sure what I was feeling at the time, and I felt stuck. Then Tyler moved a little and raised his head to gaze at me. I had never seen the gentleness in his eyes before, and it simultaneously gave a sense of security and unease. Although he remained silent, his eyes appeared to be asking me whether I was all right. I attempted to grin in the hopes that it would lessen the weird sensation, but it simply deepened the sense of quiet. Tyler's hand remained solid and warm on my arm. His fingertips moved softly, almost unconsciously, and I could feel that every touch seemed to ignite something within me that I couldn't ignore. Despite the fact that it was such a minor thing, I tried not to show that my heart was pounding. By maintaining a regular breathing pattern, I just lay there, feeling totally engrossed in the weird connection between us, unsure of what to say or do even. My thoughts became clouded, overwhelmed by the emotional intensity of the moment. Even though he was my son, the emotional weight of the moment was difficult to process. Elle didn't appear to notice my struggle. He simply remained by my side, his hand moving gently and consolingly, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. His breathing was calm, and his eyes were closed, once more leading me to believe that he was going to sleep. But then his hand shifted slightly, and I felt an emotional jolt that made me catch my breath before he opened his eyes and looked directly into mine. I mumbled his name, barely able to get the words out because I wanted to stop this, draw away, and create some distance, but I couldn't move for some reason. There was a question in his eyes, as if he was asking if this was acceptable, if I felt the same weird pull that he did. My heart thumped and my mind raced, but I couldn't bring myself to pull away because I felt torn between my role as his mother and the strange feelings that had surfaced. The tension between us was too great, like a quiet storm building in the silence. Neither of us spoke, but the air was full of unspoken words that we both felt but couldn't bring ourselves to say. As he leaned closer, I felt my breath catch, and every thought had faded away, leaving only that moment between us. Now Tyler's hand was softly resting on my shoulder, his fingers stirring as though he was unsure. It too, for a minute, The world seemed far away, and all I could think about was how warm he was and how I could practically hear his heartbeat. I tried to calm myself by closing my eyes and telling myself to pull back, to break the closeness that felt so overwhelming and confusing. But then I felt his hand gently move up, brushing a strand of hair away from my face. It was such a simple, caring gesture, but it made my heart hurt in ways I couldn't understand. When I opened my eyes, I saw that he was staring at me with such tenderness and trust, and I could see every little detail, including the tiny freckles, the gentle curve of his mouth, and the way his eyes searched mine. I could tell that he was just as lost in this moment as I was. We remained like that, suspended in the silence, as if time had stopped. I felt distance from the boy I had raised, like he was going through something I didn't understand. Just as I thought we'd stay frozen in that silence forever, I took a deep breath to try to calm the air of emotions inside me, hoping he hadn't noticed. "Sorry, Mom," he said softly, his voice full of uncertainty. "I didn't mean to make things strange." Tyler avoided my gaze, and I could see a hint of color on his cheeks, as if he was struggling with the same confusion I was. He pulled back slightly, breaking the trance. He looked away almost embarrassed and let out a shaky laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. This brought me back to reality for a moment, letting me realize just how close we'd been. I felt uncomfortable around my own son for the first time in a long time and was at a loss for words. I put my hand on his shoulder and smiled slightly in the hopes that it would help to calm him down. "It's okay, Tyler," I said. And I saw a flash of relief in his eyes as I said, "It's just been us for so long, and we're both probably just feeling a little lost." Just as the tension was beginning to ease, the doorbell rang, and the sudden sound brought us both back to the present, breaking whatever spell had been between us. I hastily got up, feeling my heart still racing, and went to the door, grateful for the interruption, only to find our neighbor Mike standing there. When I opened it, I recognized that it still had that weird vibe from the time with Tyler because Mike, who had always been amiable and someone I could rely on when I needed help, smiled but kept his eyes on me a little longer than normal. "Hey, Rachel." I attempted to gather myself in the hopes that he wouldn't notice anything out of the ordinary. His voice was pleasant, as he spoke to check whether I needed anything. "I decided to stop by. I can assist you with any heating problems you may be experiencing, since I am aware that it has been a little cooler lately." I had an odd rush of relief, and I briefly allowed myself to unwind. "Oh," I said. "Thank you, Mike. In fact, it does get a little cold in the house. It would be much appreciated." As Mike entered, I sensed Tyler observing us from a hallway, his countenance inscrutable. As Mike moved around checking the heater, he asked me how things were at home. We struck up a conversation, but I kept looking at Tyler, who remained silent and watched us both with an odd intensity. I looked back at him, and for a moment I saw something in his eyes, a flicker of something like jealousy, though he tried to hide it quickly. This startled me, and left me wondering if he was feeling more than he wanted to admit. I sensed his uneasiness, which created a new level of tension in the room. I was torn between trying to make things easier with Mike and knowing that Tyler was there, his eyes never leaving us. After a few minutes, Mike smiled warmly as he turned to face me. "Okay, Rachel, everything appears to be in order here. If you need further assistance, just give us a call." I thanked him, and as he walked away, I could feel the tension between Tyler and myself increasing. He was standing there with his arms crossed and a stern expression on his face as I turned to lock the door. "Tyler, are you all right?" I inquired in an attempt to learn more about his thoughts. He looked aside, shrugged, and said quietly, "Yes, I'm all right. Simply didn't think Mike would stop by. I wanted to talk to him, to find out what was going on between us." But before I could say anything more, he left me and went to his room without saying anything else. The door quietly closed behind him. I stood there, feeling a weird mix of relief, confusion, and a lingering sense that something wasn't quite done. I stood there looking at Tyler's closed door with an inexplicable pain in my head, my thoughts racing with everything that had just transpired, our intimacy, the way his eyes had lingered while Mike was present, and the odd unsaid tension that seemed to be waiting to reemerge. I walked to my room and sat on the bed's edge, repeating all of my knowledge. I wasn't sure how to deal with it, but I couldn't ignore it indefinitely. I heard a gentle knock on my door at that very moment. I wondered whether Tyler had returned, and my heart leaped a bit. I said it, attempting to sound steady. "Come in." With an inscrutable look, Tyler opened the door and entered. He approached and took a seat next to me, while glancing down at his hands for a minute. The air seemed thick with everything as we sat there in quiet. At last he said in a barely audible whisper. He trailed off, seemingly struggling with his words. "And I apologize if I made things awkward before. I have no idea what's going on." I put my hand on his and gave it a little squeeze. Since it's been just the two of us for so long, things might occasionally become complicated. But it's all right, Tyler. Perhaps we're both feeling a bit disoriented right now. He nodded while continuing to stare at his hands, before turning to face me. His eyes were loaded with a range of feelings. For a moment, I considered reaching out to give him a hug, to assure him that everything would be okay. But I wasn't sure if that was what he needed, or if it would make things even more complicated. So I just sat there and let the silence speak for us both. He said it softly, almost as if he was afraid to admit it. I didn't know how to respond, and I felt my own heart ache with that same confused confusion. "Perhaps we could simply stand back and consider everything," Tyler said gently. "It's okay to feel close, but it's also okay to need space to figure things out." He nodded slowly, but then, in a surprising move, he leaned his head on my shoulder, just like he used to when he was younger. It felt comforting, familiar, with a quiet sense of uncertainty that lingered in the room. I felt my heart soften, and I put my arm around him, pulling him close in a way that felt safe, even though I knew the questions between us weren't fully answered. For the first time in a while, I felt that maybe we didn't have to have all the answers right now. We could take it one step at a time, figuring things out together, even if it was complicated. And as we sat there, just holding on to each other, I felt a sense of calm, a quiet hope that no matter what, we would find our way through this together. We stayed like that, sitting quietly together, as if all the confusion between us could disappear just by being close. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. The stillness between us was heavy, shaped by the years we'd spent together and the unspoken thoughts in the air. After a while, Tyler lifted his head and looked at me, his face serious. His remarks lingered in the air like a question he dared not ask aloud. I'm not sure how to handle these sentiments without making things more difficult. My mind was racing as I tried to think of the right thing to say, but before I could finish, there was another knock on the door. We both jumped, startled, and looked at each other, caught off guard. The knock was firm, almost urgent, as if the person on the other side knew something was happening. In panic, I jumped up and went to the door. When I opened it, Mike was there once more, looking worried. "Rachel, I apologize for troubling you," he said, "but I just wanted to make sure everything was okay. You seemed a little strange earlier." I looked back at Tyler, who was observing us intently, his face inscrutable. I attempted to speak steadily as I said, "Thank you, Mike, but we're all right. Have a peaceful evening." Mike gave me a quick glance before shifting his gaze to Tyler. "All right," he said thoughtfully. "But keep in mind that I'm right next door if you need anything." I shut the door behind him and looked back at Tyler, who was still observing me intently. He stood up and walked slowly in my direction, and I could feel my heart pounding again. The air between us was heavy with all that was not spoken. But as soon as he got to me, he stopped, his face changing as though he were struggling with himself. "Mom," he whispered softly, his voice trembling, "perhaps we shouldn't push this, perhaps we need more time." I nodded, still experiencing the same mixed emotions in my heart. "You're correct, Tyler. Both of us must consider everything. Let's take our time." He nodded as well, and we stood there, away but near, like we were on the precipice of something beyond our control. We couldn't fully describe it, but it was both an end and a beginning. And as he left for his room, I pondered what was ahead for us. That night didn't give us answers, but it gave us something more important. The courage to pause, to breathe, to face the silence between us without running from it. Maybe that's where healing begins. Not in fixing everything, but in finally seeing one another clearly, even when the truth is uncomfortable. We're still figuring it out, step by step, together.